Hi all.
All right.
Quite hard to know what to do with all these various screens, documents, whatever, windows, where to put them all. I always end up with the one I want underneath everything else and disappear. So.
If you have a look at Lorenzo's desktop setup, it's just the most confusing thing in the world. There's just like 100 different windows open all over the place.
Yeah, I try not to do that, but nevertheless, there's always something that you want that's disappeared underneath something else.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep everything closed, but then you're never to be close something that you need like 5 minutes later, and then you can never find it in my file storage systems.
Have you tried multiple desktops? I did that with Lorenzo once, and then you just shove it onto different desktops, and then in the end, we had a competition, he and I think he won with 13.
Too many.
Way too many.
Hello.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Anna.
I have a robot running around cleaning the floor, so it's a bit noisy. I will stay muted.
Wonderful. You like it?
It will go away, but now it's in my room where I am now.
Hello.
Hi, Miriam.
Hi. How's everybody?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, thank you.
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we standing?
Well, perhaps, excuse me, perhaps I could chip in at the beginning before we start, really, by saying something that Francesca has already heard, but we were discussing the paper 4A, the vaccination paper, and it's because, you know, with well, particularly with this challenge with interventions, and to some extent with the modelling too, there have been things that have cropped up on vaccination, and it's not quite clear where they should fall and so on. And we did think rather that this paper would farm out the pharmaceutical interventions mainly, possibly, and keep them rather short here and concentrate on NPIs. But
Yeah.
it seems that that doesn't work with the way Bets has been working on it terribly well, which is very much to focus on, you know, all the clinical trial
Yeah.
evaluation and
Yeah.
efficacy and all that stuff. So I think probably we should think in terms of keeping the main, you know, all the other vaccine stuff other than those clinical trials here, if that works for you, which may mean, I mean, some of it's here anyway.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
if,
you mean we
but
just
if you
need
know
to
it's not appearing elsewhere,
Mm,
you know,
Yeah.
as much as you want to say,
yeah. So we can concentrate more on the effectiveness of vaccination and
exactly, and
possibly
strategies for
strategies and like things like immunity or partial immunity, waning immunity, these kind of things.
there are lots of things,
Yeah.
issues, I think. Maybe it will mean that the paper will become very long. I mean, that was one of the reasons for sort of doing this to start with. But I think we worry about that later. And for the moment, the main thing is to keep everything covered. And it seems that, you know, this paper is the most likely one. A bit particularly some of the modelling aspects might go in paper 6, but mainly it would be here. So that might be helpful to sort of.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that makes it maybe also a bit more balanced, because now the section on pharmaceutical interventions is quite short, and then the other one is quite long. And
Sure.
so we can just extend this part on vaccination a bit.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I know before Francesca was saying she wasn't sure whether it was here or there or whatever. So I think it's clearer this way.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Good.
Okay. Well, if I look at the document, it is, I think, pretty much complete, except there is a small section in the data section, so section 2 on the data, where with a heading quality and economic modeling, where I had hoped that Matt can write maybe a paragraph on the challenges connected to modeling economic impact, especially what kind of data would be needed, and what kind of data would be challenging to get. So that is still missing. Then the part on the modeling the biological characteristics, that's actually something I had wanted to write, but this week I didn't have time really, or if somehow it's always you get less done than you hope.
Indeed.
And we are trying to finalize a paper here in Utrecht, so we are kind of using all the time for that. So I didn't really have time for the challenges paper. I hope this will change very soon when we submit this other paper. Yes, and then let's see. This is all quite well developed, and then the last thing actually that we have to formulate out is the discussion, but there are already a lot of suggestions for what to put in the discussion. That's nice. Yeah, and then we have a complete text. So let's say, I'll make a remark now in the vaccination section that we extend that a little bit. And I saw that, Valerie, you have read this text that we have up to now. What was your impression? I mean, is it like readable or?
Yeah, I thought it was generally really good.
Okay.
I'm
Nice.
trying to remember. I put a few comments in the on the document, so presumably they're still there, or else you've taken them out because they're redundant.
Yeah, no, they're
now or
there.
whatever. But
I left them.
I thought, I mean, there's issues for most of the papers. Sort of, there's general points. There's making sure that the challenges are clearly identified, I suppose, in one way or another as we go through.
Yeah, so I mean, some people have, let's say, put, for example, in section 3, they put this explicitly.
Yeah.
Challenge number 5. Is that what you think we should do?
Different papers are doing it in different ways. I think, you know, sometimes it's a heading to a section, and then some discussion. Sometimes it's a section, and within that there are sort of paragraphs, and the paragraph heading is almost the challenge, if you know what I mean. You know, they're not in general done quite as explicitly as here with sort of challenge 1, which is how we did it last time. But sometimes it's sort of bold in the section in some way, and sometimes it's a heading. And I don't think.
Okay,
but different things work better or not so well, depending on the context.
I want to make it uniform in the paper.
Exactly. So. I don't think it matters so much which way you do it. It's whichever way you think works best. But the main thing is that at the moment, it's not uniform. But what else?
For the data
at some point we need, it would be good to have a few comments about how this compares with the sorts of challenges that were identified in the 2015 volume, because this was one of the things that Hans picked out. Not having seen any of the papers, but just something that he thought that referees would look for, because there was a previous. Right. So possibly, and it's something that I think that Dennis and I would probably say something about in the introduction, because, you know, it's a very different context now in the middle of this big pandemic as compared with, you know, in between. But if there are specific things, just to say how the challenges that people were looking at there have changed through the context of the pandemic, or new issues that have arisen, or, you know, any remarks that occur to you, really, but just to relate it back fairly briefly to the sorts of things that people were bringing out before. Other things that, well, I mean, it's just the final editorial things like reference styles and spellings and standardizing. I mean, at some point all that will get sorted, but that's not
sure. That's for later.
That's not. But you know, writing wise, I thought it was really nice.
Okay, that's nice. And of course, it needs shortening and cross-referencing and all that stuff.
Those sort of things a bit. Yeah.
So what do others think in the group? Should we have the challenges as separate sort of headings, or should we integrate them into the text? What do others think? I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I can see advantages in both ways of doing it.
Can I say something about the data section that we have? I mean, in the data section, there is a natural heading according to the types of data. And then in each paragraph, there are sort of challenges written down regarding each type of data. So, and they're not like, I don't know, maybe you can unify them, but I think the natural structuring is more according to the types of data, because there are many little and
Yeah.
big
Yeah, yeah.
challenges, so you would end up with a list, you know, of 15 there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one style which has worked well in some places, to have, you know, within the section, you've got a, section 2 is data challenges. So it's got that in the heading. And then you've just got these sub, you know, paragraph headings on biological data or surveillance data or whatever. And that sort of framework is one that's worked quite well in a lot of other places too,
Yeah.
other papers too. But I don't know whether that would work for the other sections here, whether everybody else would be.
I think it can. I mean, and we can, of course, we can decide to do it like that, and then highlight the challenges, for example, by boldface, or what we could also do is have a kind of table where some of the challenges are summarized. I mean, that's then probably not going to be complete, but
A figure, Miriam.
or a figure. Yeah, for this I now can't really imagine how it should be in a figure, but yeah, so that
So you have sections
that
and
you
then
can somehow look and you see, let's say in one overview, you see all the various challenges, and then we can say, okay, this is in section such and such. I don't know whether it's useful, but
you can make it maybe according to the different sections. So if a figure has like different components, and those components are data, and basically they have the structure of the manuscript that has been developed. And then for each of them, like below or so, you list in you know, in short like keywords what the challenges are, or like short list of challenges.
Oh yeah, you mean in the table, or do you mean this as a figure, or
In a figure,
text?
in a figure
In a
where
figure.
where you make, like, I don't know, circles or bubbles, I don't know, like
Yeah.
parts, and then
Okay.
you connect them, and then
Right.
you have below or inside of the bubbles these different challenges.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's probably easier to do it that way, that we keep these like headings, like in the section on data, and we formulate the challenges as part of the text. And then I just think of section headings also for the other sections to make it, let's say, uniform. I mean, that was basically also what was in the outline. I can maybe just use what was in the outline as section headings. Okay, yeah, that will work. Let's if the others agree, I would do it like that. Or are there any other strong opinions or weak opinions?
So for section 3, for instance, to insert some headings on section 3 and then adding the challenges.
So I would, for section 3, I would somehow reformulate so that these challenges are, let's say, integrated into the, let's say, paragraph that follows, and I would add then headings to those sections.
Okay.
Do you agree with that, or do you? I mean, sometimes it's hard to say goodbye to what you've formulated. But I mean, it's not going to get lost. The challenges as formulated will still be in the text, only they will not be as headings as they are now.
No, yeah. I think the structure will be there, and the challenges will still be formulated on in this using this structure, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, the other general, I was just trying to remember back, the other general comment I made was about the extent of sort of description of what's happened over the last year, COVID-wise, rather than trying to look forward a bit more and use what's happened to sort of generate examples of why there are challenges, rather than be too sort of descriptive of challenges that have arisen in the past for their own sake, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, we should also not forget that there might be other types of challenges. I mean,
Exactly.
Before COVID, there was always discussion about vector-borne diseases that were emerging, or new influenza strains and so on. I mean, we shouldn't forget that there are also other infectious diseases that can lead to problems in the future, which have possibly other challenges. Like I think vector-borne diseases have different modeling challenges and also different data challenges. Thinking about climate change in the future, maybe we should also mention that somehow. Let's say in the discussion somewhere, what do we expect in the future in view of possible climate change effects? Is that already in the discussion? Let's see.
There's a bit about that in Mix paper 2 on wildlife human interfaces and the effects of climate change on new viruses and so on. But I mean, that doesn't in any way stop it being mentioned here, is it?
No, sure. We will mention it here, and then we can refer to this.
Yeah.
Which chapter is that?
That would be 2.
Oh, yeah.
Miriam, hi, this is Jasmina. I
Hi.
wanted to make hi, sorry, I've missed a few of the meetings. I will pick up the slack, if
Okay.
that's the right word.
No problem.
So the aspect that I wanted to comment on is on 3. I think some of the challenges, for example, challenge 1 and challenge 2, I wonder whether we could group these into a multi-scale modeling challenge. So to get, especially because the way we're going to write now is they will be within the text. So the text can address the multi-scale in terms of biological scale and in terms of population, i.e. within host and between, which is the scale of the transmission, and the geographical as well. So if we call it multi-scale challenge, addressing the multi-scale challenge of modeling, we could talk about that. The other thing I wanted to note is that the paragraph that is written as challenge 0, I think it has a good point, but it's a very descriptive of a specific way of interacting with policy decisions, and in a way, I think it's too constrictive for this section. I mean, this is my opinion. So I like the idea that it says it's extremely challenging to define the precise objective function, and this is different during an ongoing epidemic or when you prepare for it. And but I think the rest of it is too descriptive. I mean, this is just my opinion.
Yeah. So you mean we should simply make this more general to say that, this communication with policymakers is one of the challenges that modelers have to meet in case of a pandemic. And I mean, this is not only defining the objective, but also, let's say, simply the communication between modelers and policymakers, and communicating uncertainty on all these things. So we could expand on that a bit.
And it's not just the communication during the pandemic, because there is ongoing communication. So most of the people that I inspire have had conversations with different levels around pre-pandemic preparedness before then. And this was sort of the development of the focused work that SPIAM was doing stemmed from that. And Lorenzo is probably best placed, and I have done some work in this field. So, but it's about learning the lesson and identifying the challenge in communicating differently in 2018 and in 2020.
Yeah, but I think the UK is very special in that respect. I mean, not in every country is there such a good communication between modelers and policymakers as you have in the UK.
Yeah, so
That's really
I know that. So
exceptional.
yesterday I spoke to people who are involved in the modeling the Austrian effort, and they are really looking up at the way that this is done in the UK to learn a lesson. And I've
Yes.
spoken previously to people in Canada, so the equivalent of Public Health England in Canada that is looking at this. And yeah, so this will be an important aspect if we are discussing, but maybe there is part of this to go into the policy, and I haven't read the policy paper,
Yeah,
but maybe there's part to go there.
Yeah, yeah.
there is a bit of discussion in the policy paper, which of course inevitably is written very much from a UK focus. And I think that the people in the group there were very conscious that it was rather a UK oriented thing. But and one thought was possibly to try to send the paper, which is nearly, well, I mean, it is sort of, no, sorry, well, it has gone out already, but, you know, whether both that paper and also actually the data paper, which is, I'm getting the two muddled for a minute, but the idea of these things which are done from a UK focus, of trying, when we send them around for comment to people, trying to include some people from other countries who can add a bit about, you know, the examples of their own, from their own perspectives, really, as to how, you know, is this a common challenge, or is it, I mean, overall it will be a common challenge, probably, whatever it is, but the focus is going to be different depending on the local conditions and organizations and structures. So, you know, if we can get people to sort of comment and add little bits, it might be useful. And
I can ask my collaborators, the two I mentioned in the two countries, if they'd be interested to comment and get back to you, Valerie.
But yeah, that would be useful. But certainly there will be some discussion of the sort of structure that they use in the UK, in sort of SAGE and SPI-M and things in the policy paper.
Okay.
So there would be a cross-reference would be possible to that.
Yeah, and I think there is an important aspect there from the new, depends when this will come out, there'll be the new National Institute for Health Protection, NIHP, in the UK, which will absorb the JBC and the PHE, and it will be sort of involved quite a lot in what SPI-M and SAGE are doing. So it will be depending, so that will be formed in April, and so I guess the paper is not going to come out before then, but it will be interesting to note on that. But I can mention that to the policy people, Lisa specifically.
Yeah,
I think that's
that
too
would be good.
specific for this paper. I mean, I think we can make some general remarks in the introduction, but how it is specifically organized in specific countries, I think that's then should be in the policy paper or elsewhere.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is in the section where we are discussing frameworks. So there is this. I don't know whether we need to borrow a little bit from the modeling component around the ability of different framework to answer different questions across the pandemic. And an example would be sort of untangling the statistical analysis and untangling of an effect of an intervention versus predicting or forecasting things that intervention may do in future. So the mathematical modeling aspect.
Yeah. In which section would you put that?
So that's the question. I was reading this and I wasn't sure. I would probably put it in the theoretical framework to understand transmission, but then that's not about transmission. It's about evaluating interventions and evaluate them now or evaluating a scenario analysis.
So maybe that should be in section 6 on the parameter estimation and model fitting, somehow to explain.
But that's about that section is more about the nitty-gritty of the fitting rather than
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, what do we do fitting for? I mean, it can have two purposes. Either you can fit to estimate parameters from data, or you can fit your model to then make predictions for the future. So maybe
yeah, so okay, yeah, maybe
So-
we can phrase it around having the need to have a good fit is the key thing to scenarios, and then how do you define the good fit in that context, and refer to statistical stuff maybe.
yeah, and
Yeah, and-
maybe I don't know whether it fits in the section, but yeah, maybe somehow the difference between fitting and validation. Although,
Yeah.
I mean, then it becomes very technical, which I think the technical aspects should then be more. I mean, there's also a chapter on statistical things, isn't there?
Yeah, there's an estimation one, which is, I think, where I initially brought up the ideas about the difference between estimation and prediction and how they
Oh,
differ.
yeah.
So there is a bit in there, but it's kind of not included anywhere at the moment because it didn't really fit in any of the sections that we currently have. So I think it's transferred a bit over to modeling, and there's obviously intervention aspects of it as well, as Jasmine has just described. So I'm happy to put something in that just section 6, because I think there's definitely links towards parameter estimation, as you said, Miriam. It's kind of a different dimension of the estimation. Parameter estimation part is the validation. I guess it's more of the model fitting side, which could be extended to prediction and validation as well.
Can I ask about section 4? So is one of my tasks to write an aspect on the vaccination?
I don't know. I mean, I can't give anybody any tasks.
I just wasn't sure because because it's not populated yet. So I just wondered whether there is a need to do something there, or
Well, we do have something under, or which section for? Are
Four.
you-
So challenges in modeling pharmaceutical interventions.
There's a page and a half there.
There is something
Oh,
about
I'm
vaccine-
looking at the wrong document there.
I guess you
You're
are.
looking at an earlier version.
No, I'm looking at the one today at 1410. Okay.
Oh, but there is already something about vaccination. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
just
think
decided.
perhaps the confusion is coming in because I'm not sure whether Jasmina was there right at the beginning of today's meeting when we discussed, because, you know, I've got in here a comment that said cross-refer to 4A, and that really now
see.
needs to go out, probably because there won't, except for the trials, there won't be a lot of things on in 4A in terms of more general things. So did you hear that bit of discussion, Jasmina?
No, I didn't. Sorry,
Okay,
Valerie.
so it was just basically that we've clarified that it looks, while we originally thought that 4A would deal with all the pharmaceutical inventions, so that interventions, so that would be vaccination, but also treatment. And now it seems that 4A is going to be almost entirely focused on clinical trials in terms of vaccine development and evaluation and so on. So the other things that need to be, you know, this will be the main place to put them in, I think. But
Okay.
whether we've got it all here already, we won't. I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is this will be the place where if anything's going to be covered in detail, it will be here and not in another paper.
Can somebody just tell me where is that text? Because I'm looking at chapter 4, challenges for modeling with LP at the end, saved as today as 1410, and I don't see anything in 4.
I'm not seeing anything with LP at the end.
Oh.
I'm seeing that heading comes at the bottom of a page, and then there's about for me, and then there's about a page and a half of paragraphs before we go on to 5. Is that?
What's the title of that
I'm
version?
in the Google Doc.
Yeah,
I
me
am
too.
no, I'm in the IDP folder on the Dropbox.
Yeah, in chapter 4.
Yeah, so the title is chapter 4 _ challenges and then _ for modeling interventions for future pandemics, draft 073. Okay, so maybe this is old.
I think
I'm
you're in the wrong folder.
I was
Sam.
looking in the Dropboxes. Me too.
I'm certainly looking at a Google Doc.
Yeah.
Is the Google Doc in the
Oh.
Dropbox linked out?
There is a link in the Dropbox to this Google document, and the document is called chapter 4 _ challenges for modeling interventions for future pandemics.
I saw it and then web at the end. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I did
exactly.
not see that.
Ah, okay.
And that's also the document where you can put in remarks or suggestions for rewording.
I see. Now I see the extra material. So apologies for that. Okay.
Okay, but I mean, you're of course highly welcome to extend this, because we decided today that we want to extend this on vaccination a little bit to include, let's say, population level impact of vaccination, vaccination strategies, and these kind of things. So stuff that's not going to be in Bets's chapter that mainly deals with vaccination or vaccine trials.
Do we discuss, I'm reading this very broadly, very briefly now. Do we discuss here the aspect of uncertainty of vaccination, effectiveness at the beginning, and sort of as data become, the need to kind of change your both modeling framework, calibration, and data usage?
Yeah, that I think, at least if it's not too technical, then I think it fits. So for example, things of, issues around vaccine efficacy that is not known in the beginning, or whether a vaccine protects only against disease or also against transmission, and so on, these kind of questions, or how long lasting is vaccination protection. These are things that could be in this section, I think.
And I guess the main aspect that the modeling helps, or maybe one of the main aspects, is to tell us whether we would end up, what would we end up as a sort of final epidemic size, or whether we will reach the dare say herd immunity with the vaccination rollout as it is, or whether you need to adapt your rollout, or speed up or slow down, or include different groups.
Yeah, exactly. Or how long does it take until we can lift other measures, and these kind of things.
Okay.
There's quite in that first paragraph, which hopefully now we can all see, that starts vaccination is a pharmaceutical intervention, etc. Down towards the second half of that paragraph, there are a lot of different issues to do with the current vaccine, but also potential interest for the future. And I guess one of the thoughts was that some of those might be expanded upon a bit if there are sort of modeling aspects to them.
Yeah, and I guess what is missing from there is the allocation of vaccine, because there is a prioritization issue and then there is an allocation issue.
Yeah, good point. That should be included.
I just write it in because because I will forget.
Yeah, do that. Yeah, and I mean, for some infections, you also have this question. I mean, sometimes there have been vaccines with quite a low vaccine efficacy. So then you have this conflict. Should it be introduced to give some protection? But then you have the, let's say, danger that people change their behavior, thinking they're protected. So these kind of challenges of, when is a vaccine good enough to actually be used for a pandemic situation? We are facing a bit the same discussions now, of course. Although
Miriam, I just send a request because I don't have editing access, and maybe Daniel will be in the same position.
Yeah. I think Daniel has already, don't you?
I'm accessing the document. I'm taking a look at it. So, yeah.
But I think you sent me already a request at some point.
Yes, I have access. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a point about the behavior aspects of vaccination, I think that'll be really interesting actually, because that's one thing we're seeing in Manchester at the moment is we're starting to see a lot of hospital admissions of people who've been vaccinated and basically elderly people who've now completely changed their behavior patterns. And obviously there's the inevitable vaccine failure. And now we're basically a lot of admissions have kind of dropped off because of lockdown, but a lot of the patients coming in now are just very frail, elderly people a month post-vaccine. So it is quite concerning.
And do you mean they are going out and socializing a lot more?
Yeah, it seems to be the case. I mean, so this is just anecdotal information from clinicians, respiratory clinicians in the Manchester hospitals, but basically they're seeing the same thing across multiple sites.
Interesting.
I think from my limited experience of my generation, I mean, people are really split into different camps. There are people who've really barely changed their behavior, in perhaps not being quite as super careful in terms of over and above the regulations as they used to be, but basically not unchanged. And then it's obvious that there are some who think that, right, they've been vaccinated, life's back to normal now, we can just do whatever. And so I suspect Chris is seeing the latter camp a bit.
Yeah.
Makes you slightly worried about the vaccine passport holidays full of vaccinated elderly people.
Well, you see all these things in the press about, now we can all go and book our foreign holidays and so on.
Yeah.
Me, I'm going to the Yorkshire Dales, miles away from anybody. So, super
sounds
cautious.
very safe. Okay. Let's see. How should we proceed? Did anybody think about a possible figure or other, let's say, nice additions?
I mean, so Lorenzo sent me the task of trying to think of a figure, and I must admit I didn't make much progress with it. But basically, my idea was similar to what Gano was saying, of just having some bubbles or clouds and trying to create links between them. But as soon as I tried thinking of that, it became just basically a complete network. I mean, there was especially with the data section, because the data section would underpin all of these other challenges.
Yeah.
And so it's something that is probably worth thinking about a bit more, but it might not look as tidy as we want it to, is my concern.
Even maybe just having almost the table that you were talking about earlier, which basically just gives you the structure of the paper with a list of the sort of topics within each challenge, or the challenges within each topic could be useful. Just gives you a sort of an oversight of it. I suppose it depends how you're reading it. I mean, with Google Docs at the moment, we've got the structure of it down the side, but one won't have that. So something analogous to that could be useful.
Yeah, definitely.
If I may jump in, we could also have a progress bar or some kind of temporal evolution. If we were going back to what we're discussing about how last publication's challenges paper is different to what we're currently seeing, and perhaps highlighting how these issues continue to be a problem, new issues have arisen here, almost as an overview of the broader themes that we face, rather than going into the nitty-gritty in every single section, because then I absolutely agree with Chris, we will end up with a complete network.
Yeah. Well,
This
that
is
would be great, but it's not easy to make.
Well,
Because then-
one option I just had the idea as Helena was speaking is violin plots. Previous, like we do for the R estimates, we
Mhm.
could put challenges into violin plots, or they don't have probability or anything, but they look like a violin plot
Mhm.
or a box plot, and then we put a dashed line, and on the right hand side we put the challenges that existed previously, or we put them as a subset of each other.
Mhm. Okay, I don't really.
I'm not sure if I follow the idea violin, because usually you have some distribution.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
using
But I
violin
don't mean so.
plots.
I mean a box. Then let's say a box with the challenge, and then if the challenge existed in the previous one, we overlap it with a different one, and we say what this challenge is expanded as.
Yeah,
I
don't
can
see
try
it
and sketch
completely.
it on paper.
Yeah,
and
that's-
then
I
think
think
about
that's a
how we
good
might.
idea. So if you make like sketches of what you mean, then we can discuss it. Right now, I can't really see it before me how this should work.
Well,
I mean,
think-
the
I think-
timeline, that I can imagine better somehow, although, I mean, do we have more than 2 time points?
But something that brought together how it sort of was seen then in a different context. than
Yeah,
now
but
would
then
be-
we also need to have a full, let's say, overview of how it was seen a couple of years ago, which requires reading all those papers again.
No, I was only thinking what one can do if you look at the. I think Dennis has put them in the challenge in the Dropbox in the overall challenges folder. There's a table of contents, and the table of contents for all the chapters gives the sort of challenges, because you know that one was done very much in the form of 5 challenges for X. So you've got a list of 5 challenges. So those are itemized in the table of content. So one could look and see what sorts of issues were being
Okay.
raised then without having to read the whole
Mhm.
volume, which I agree would take a while.
Yeah, okay, let me see. Chapter 10, or what? What did he say?
Well, I don't know which ones would be the I don't know which ones we'd be comparing it with. Where does anybody think interventions would come? They're probably scattered throughout to make life hard. This, in number 5, there's 9 challenges for incorporating dynamics of behavior. I suppose might be, some of that might be relevant. But the table of contents is quite useful in that respect.
Yeah, okay. I will look through these papers to see whether there is anything that we can use or any ideas.
In the list, in case anybody hasn't found it, it's down as 00A, table of contents. If you look at the contents of the 2015 folder, there are all the papers, and there's also a preface and table of contents. And the table of contents just gives the list.
Okay, so they put also then the challenges into the table of contents.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's of course an advantage. Let's say then you easily get an overview of the whole
Yeah,
set of papers.
yeah,
So that would be an argument to actually have them as explicit, let's say, sentences formulated or as a kind of table in the paper.
I think those papers were much more focused than I think the ones here are typically going to be. We're probably going to have more than 7, 8 challenges in most of the papers, I would think.
Yeah, okay, but we could like
but yes,
extract the main challenges. I mean, there
Yeah,
may be not
main
all,
areas, yeah,
all of the same relevance or importance.
yeah,
I mean, we could say we extract one challenge per section to give the most important, let's say, information on what's in this section.
yeah, or even just the section title. You know, if the section it's challenges to do with something, then that could be the.
Yeah, no, yeah, it depends a bit on whether you want to kind of have the same structure as it was at that time.
I don't think it needs to have at all. I mean, it would be quite nice if there was some fairly uniform structure across the papers this time. But
I think that's also possibly what the editors of the journal would like.
But whether that will happen, I'm not sure. Well,
of course, the editors have changed since the last time. So I don't know whether they have the same ideas.
Well, last time I guess Hans was one of the main editors as well as the editor. Of this, so that there was a, you know, duplication of role there, which we don't have this time.
But you have already communicated with the editors about this, I think, and
yes.
So did they have?
I think it's very much left to us. We haven't been given as far as I'm aware, any particular guidance as to. I mean, we've described the sort of setup we wanted to have, but not the details of the papers.
Oh yeah, now let's see. Chris posted a figure.
Yeah, I was trying to find the chapter 10 figure. I couldn't find the most recent folder, but I found this one in the archive. I wasn't sure if that's what Dennis was referring to.
Let's just have a look.
Ooh, takes a long time to download.
Yeah, it's 10 megabytes somewhere.
Coming up. Wait a minute. Let's see if I can find it.
One of us could share screens. That would work. I've got it, if that helps.
Have you got the latest version?
Let's see. Then I can stop this.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a later version, which an updated version that's sort of properly drawn, as it were.
Almost like the handwritten one better.
Well, I agree, but there was a problem over sort of copyright issues, I think, of some of the drawings, and now it's got 7 rather than 8 sections. But we can probably find the latest one somewhere.
There's also in the IDP Dropbox, that's chapter 10 folders disappeared.
It has. I was just looking for it, Dennis, and wondering where it had got to.
I'll go and look. I think I'll need to go to Dropbox and restore it. Someone moved it or something by mistake.
Maybe you went to the archive.
Well, there would be, but it shouldn't all be.
No, there'll be a folder in the archive that contains old stuff from it, but that's not the same thing.
No, I mean the archive's got
policy, not just policy.
the archive looks as if it is all archive stuff. The most recent bit is 16th of March. So where has somebody left it?
Yeah, I mean, this type of figure I've seen in several variations. So to show this process of modeling, how it works with communication and so on. Yeah, it's a nice figure, and if we can, but let's say for our topic, we have to think of something maybe similar with these kind of symbols. That's nice.
Yeah, it's the type of thing. I mean, if each paper could produce one of these, it could sort of create a nice sort of, don't know, synergization across them,
Yeah.
and then it'd be easy to then follow it. And I don't know if it'd be worth then you could have like a few sub arrows coming off. So I mean, here there's one arrow per section, but as we say, so say in the data section or some of the others, we identify a few explicit challenges, whether they could sort of branch out of each of these boxes. I mean, it might then look a bit messy.
I think one aspect we could do maybe is a color coding. So like there could be a data challenge that's colored one color, and an estimation on a framework challenge, a vaccine, then interventions challenge, etc.
You mean like here that you have these colors, and then you can have actually,
and yeah, so we, for example,
in different colors.
Yeah, so let me find an example. So technical model challenge, which is kind of a navy here, occurs also in the modeling, in the estimation, in the data, but will have a different, it's a different challenge around it for each of those teams.
Yeah, I was thinking more like bubbles with the challenges, and then if you have some dependence between those challenges, then you would connect them. But then, of course, we have to decide if there is a dependence or not, right? So it's maybe sometimes it's
that
tricky.
was the thing that Chris mentioned, that actually there's dependence between everything. So
yeah,
you get like everything is connected.
Yeah, I mean, it's a type of thing. I guess you could be quite strict with what you class as the dependence, I guess, to sort of make your network a bit sparser. But then, it's what criteria you use and how you make sure they're kind of consistent. Might be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, if we can come up with something like that, I think it would be nice.
Yeah, I say I put the later version of that in the Dropbox. I can't, for some reason, I can't copy it into the link into here, but you could find it in the Dropbox. It's now in the chapter 4 interventions thing. So the file is there. I mean, it looks really very similar. It's just a sort of properly drawn one with symbols that we're allowed to use.
So I just posted in the chat that chapter 10 had been inadvertently renamed to a hyphen, so it had gone right to the top of the list. So I've renamed it back to chapter 10, so you should be able to find it.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
So it hadn't disappeared or been deleted, it had just been renamed.
Okay, shall we say that until next week, everybody reads and comments on the existing text and maybe fills in still a few empty slots, if you have ideas for that, so that we are then next week at a version that we can actually send to Hans. And yeah, I'll try to find some time to also do some editing to maybe start shortening the text a bit.
Is there anyone else we want to send it to as well as Hans at this stage?
I think this should go definitely to people like Graham Medley, maybe, about interventions, and he's been involved. I don't know if he'll have capacity, or maybe Angela McLean.
Yeah, if they have, well, Graham has said he would look at things. I don't know about Angela. Obviously, they'll both be really, really busy. But we obviously don't want to overload them. And when we get round, I may have said this before,
Yeah,
I
maybe.
forget who I've said it to, but when we get round to submitting, we want to be able to suggest a few referees. One needs to sort of keep that in the back of one's mind as well.
Now, yeah, last time we also said we might want to show it to somebody who's not UK based to get
Yes,
maybe a
yeah.
different perspective.
I think that would be good.
Yeah. So I could do that if you agree. I think, yeah, I think we, let's say in terms of UK participation, we are quite strong already on the paper. So maybe nice to get some other people outside the UK still.
Yeah, also might be worth, if for the sort of internal quick review, sending to someone who's been sort of less involved with the COVID response. So obviously Graham or Angela would be able to tell us if we missed anything that's been obvious in this current response, but we want to make sure it's not too COVID focused.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
except that, I mean, both of them were involved sort of 20 odd years, 25 years ago with HIV and things like that. More, well, 45 years ago, not 25. But you know, I mean, going back to the end of the 80s, the 90s, I mean, Graham was sort of involved then. So I think his experience will cover quite a bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Very true. I think I'm just in a COVID bubble at the moment, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really good point, but to have people who have been less involved, and obviously they will be very focused on that at the moment, but hopefully could step back a bit. But if there are other people who don't have to step so far to get out of the bubble, that might be good.
Originally we had also Gianpaolo and Peter in this group. We could, I mean, I think they are less involved in COVID, so we could also ask them.
Yeah.
I mean, Gianpaolo has been around for a long time and definitely also has followed the HIV intervention efforts. And Peter anyway has a little bit different perspective, more from the mathematical point of view. Okay, but I think then, yeah, we still need another week to brush it up a bit.
Well,
Do you want
Miriam,
to try to? Sorry.
I was just going to say I've requested access to the access to the Google Doc. I don't know if that's gone through. Just one thing I noticed was there's a little bit of overlap between the data section and some of the basically, as I said, where you've got the data section connects everywhere. There's a little bit of repetition that I wanted to try.
Yeah. We have to take that out at the end. So that's what I mean by shortening, just to make sure that it gets more concise. Otherwise, it's also too long somehow.
Do you want to try to offload some of that, Miriam? Do you know how best to do you were talking about having a go at shortening, but can you, do you want help? Do you want to do it yourself, or do you want help? Basically?
I can definitely cut down the bits that are flagged up to me in my read through.
I'm happy to do that. Go ahead and do that. Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit unsure whether we should all simultaneously do that, and then you get maybe too chaotic cutting and pasting and nobody sees anymore what's going on.
But maybe if you had a look at it first and then sort of said to somebody, can you have a go at these particular paragraphs? Maybe there wouldn't be too much overlapping work that way. I don't know. I mean, it's
right.
Yeah, I mean, we could try basically just commenting where the areas that need attention are, and then either Miriam or you can delegate for people to address different comments. Might be easier because, yeah, as you say, if we all start cutting and pasting, I might delete an overlap somewhere, and someone deletes the other comment, and we end up omitting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what a bit what I'm afraid of. But I mean, if you volunteer, Chris, we could, I could, let's say, or you could at least first start commenting and making, checking the places where things occur double or where you think.
Yeah, I'll go through it. I'll do it in comments for now. I'll just flag things up. And if anyone else wants to do that, then we can basically, I guess if we all have a go at commenting, then we'll pick.
Yeah, commenting is fine. Everybody can comment and suggest new text. But I think for the cutting and moving, we should restrict it to, let's say, a small number of people, because otherwise it gets out of hand. Okay, I think then we have a plan for the coming week. And let's aim to get, let's say, a document ready that we can then send to others for commenting.
Right.
Okay, very good. Then I think that's it for today. Or does anybody still have issues that you want to raise? Questions? If not, then I'll say goodbye and have a nice weekend.
Yeah, and you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.